Guys, we're joined from Atlanta by Rose Love, attorney and chairperson of the Charlotte E. Ray Legal Society there in Atlanta. We thank you so much for joining us. We got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High Schools for our business law class, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, including my good friend April Majors over at Ridgeland High School and my friend Jennifer Coate at the Academic Options Center and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. Now, obviously, we want to talk about all the great things you're doing in immigration law and how it's so important to be talked about, and obviously your legal society. But just give us a little background. Went to Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee, a small HBCU, and then went to LSU, one of the largest PWIs in the country, which is such a cool combination. With me being an LSU alum as well, so even if we have kids that don't care about being an attorney. Just give us a little background on that experience coming from an HBCU to a very large PWI.
Okay. Well, first to give you a little background for me, I'm from Douglasville, Georgia, a small town about 15 miles from downtown Atlanta. That's where I was raised. When I was 18 years old, I went to Lane College, as you said, a small HBCU in Jackson, Tennessee, between Memphis and Nashville. Later on, I did some post-bac work at the University of West Georgia. I went on to studying my master's at LSU, as you said. But ironically, I went to law school first before I went to get my master's. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
In reverse.
Okay.
In reverse. So my experience going from, I guess, an HBCU to predominantly white college, because after undergrad, I went to University of West Georgia to do post-bac in English. But I'm from Douglasville, Georgia, where I was the only Black girl in my whole grade growing up.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to a white college, white university was not a culture shock to me. Actually, it was the reverse. Going to an HBCU was a culture shock to me because I was not raised around Black people.
Wow.
Exactly. So it's more so, what was that like being raised around white people, then going to an HBCU? That's
That's incredible.
Point. So I am the middle of three girls, and all of us, it was mandated by my parents that we went to an HBCU. We were allowed to go to any college that we wanted to in the United States as long as an HBCU, because of the very fact that we were raised by white people, not by white people, but around white people. And my parents felt that it was important for us to be around our own people, to understand how Black people act in the academic setting and professional setting. So that's why I went to an HBCU. I always joke and say it was to escape actually white people, to go to be around a lot of Black people, to see actually how we maneuvered. And when I got to Lane College, which I always say was, besides being a Christian, was the best decision I've ever made in my life,
Wow.
independently as an adult. Because as an eight, actually I picked Lane when I was 16. We had to pick our colleges sophomore year, so we knew where we were going when we were studying for the LSAT and all that stuff. So I knew I was going to Lane when I was 16 years old. So that was an independent adult decision without my parents influencing that decision. And I actually picked Lane because at the time, it was the only HBCU in Tennessee that was 100% Black. So I always said if I was going to go Black, I was going to go all the way Black.
Wow.
My friends who were white were going to Trevecca in Nashville in Tennessee. So
Yep.
I was like, okay,
Trevecca,
my friends are
Trevecca
going
Nazarene.
yeah, exactly. That was like, my friends are going to Tennessee. I'll go to Tennessee. I have to find a HBCU. Let's find the blackest of the Black HBCUs. And that's why I picked Lane. It was between Lane and TSU. So I ended up picking Lane because they were very friendly, very family oriented. As soon as I started applying, they were sending me updates about the school, about the students, Christmas cards. So before I got to Lane, I already felt that I was a part of the school and a part of the family.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah, when I got to Lane, And actually, while in high school, before I got to Lane, I was a an exchange student in Japan. So before I got to Lane, I actually studied in Japan because while in school, my whole high school career, I actually studied the Japanese language and did Japanese competitions. So I wanted to,
Wow.
yeah. So I actually lived in Japan. I did the gap year before attending Lane. So I went from being the only Black girl growing up to from about 8 or 9 years old in Douglasville, and then almost for a full year in Japan, the only Black person in America. And a lot of times, if I wasn't in the city of Tokyo, I lived in a regular city where regular Japanese people live. It was the first time in their whole entire life that they'd ever seen a Black person. So
Wow.
not only was I representing America, I was representing a Black person, just in general. I always said I didn't know if I was a monkey or Beyonce because they were like running to see me. Because literally, no, seriously, never seen a Black person in their entire life. Because what Black person goes to Fukuoka, Japan, and lives there? Just me. So then, being surrounded by all Japanese people is when I went and lived for 4 years around all Black people. And I will
Wow.
tell you that my time at Lane College with all Black people, I've never been around more diverse people. Never. Never, never, never. Because just growing up where there wasn't Black people, it was just my family. Now, when I got to high school, there was more Black people, probably like it was 85% white and maybe 4% Black, and the other was other. But just growing up where it's just your family or your church family, your own community outside of school, you kind of think that every Black person will be like you. Until I got to Lane and realized that Black people are not monolithic. We are so very different.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was growing up in Douglasville, even though I was Black and around a lot of white people, we grew up in the same neighborhood. So we were more alike than we were different. But because Lane is a private college, not a state school,
Yeah.
where you have people coming from all across the country, where you have people coming from Memphis, St. Louis, Milwaukee, New York, Bahamas, Chicago, Black people from every different walks of life in a small town in Jackson, Tennessee. Some people were really rich where their parents were doctors and lawyers, and some were the first people really. My best friend was the first person in her family to graduate high school,
Wow.
where my great grandfather had a master's degree.
Wow.
So that was like, what? Like crazy. So it was that where you had some people came in, their families had college experience, but from parents was teacher, but it was just so much. Like I said, I'm not a first generation college person. My great grandfather, literally one generation from slavery, had a master's degree.
Wow.
And here I was next door to my best friend in college, who she was the very first person from St. Louis, Missouri to graduate high school. And her
Wow.
whole entire family of coming over in 1667, whatever, on the slave trade to actually graduate high school.
That's incredible. And I think it's important, not only, obviously the HBCU serve such a great purpose in this part of the country, but, even if somebody doesn't want to go to HBCU, the smaller school environment, especially if you want to be an attorney, can be very useful to get that personalized attention from professors. Here in Mississippi, we have Tougaloo, which is a great small HBCU as well. And also, Mississippi College has a great pre law program, but they're smaller. You can get to know your professors. And I just tell kids all the time, if you're serious about wanting to be an attorney, really consider these smaller schools. You can go to the big law school, but, these smaller schools offer such intimate setting when it comes to education. And like you said, it has the family atmosphere, especially at the smaller HBCUs. They just do such a great job um, of cultivating that family and really making everybody feel a part. Now, obviously, you talked about you went to law school in Atlanta. So just talk about the law school experience because we may have some kids that say, "Look, I want to be an attorney," because they just think it's because they think it's a bunch of money and they see stuff on TV. So just talk about what's really required in law school because I don't think our kids really understand the rigor of law school.
Well, I decided that I wanted to be an attorney actually while I was at Lane. It was my sophomore year, and I saw a documentary, Star Jones. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Star Jones, but she was one of the first co-hosts from The View. And she said something that I'll never forget. She said that she decided to be an attorney and that having a JD, that's the degree that you get from law school, empowered her because she knew that if she was to ever get fired from any job, she said, if Barbara Walters' ABC decide to fire me today, I will still be an attorney. And that's something that no one could take from me. Ironically, she got fired the next year. But guess what? She's still an attorney. And she got
Yep.
another job. I think she has a TV show where she's a judge, but it doesn't matter. She's always going to be an attorney and she will always be able to make money. And when she said that, it resonated with me. I said, I want that. I want something that someone cannot take from me.
There you go.
I will have to work really, really hard on it, but nobody will ever be able to take away the fact that I'm an attorney. I'm going to die an attorney, no matter what anybody says. I have a JD. I have a George doctorate. So technically I'm a doctor and a lawyer, and no one will be able to take that from me. But law school is very, very hard. You have to, of course, graduate from undergrad. And then you can go to law school either for a full-time program, which is 3 intense years, or a part-time program where it's 4 years. And I always say there's actually really not such thing as a part-time program in law school because the work is intense. Either way it goes, you take one less class, but you're working full-time too. So I think they just want to make you feel better by saying it's part-time, but it's really not. Law school is very, very hard. I always say that it's kind of like you can't explain. It's kind of like trying to explain to someone what it feels like being wet, and they've never been wet before, right? Like, how could you explain to someone what it feels like to be wet without using the word wet? Like, it's very hard for somebody to understand that, not unless they've actually been wet before. You kind of say kind of like heavy or something, but you have to be wet to know what wet feels like. You have to put your hand in water to actually know. So that's what law school is. But I will tell you that being a Black person in the legal field, there's 1.2 million U.S. attorneys. And out of that, only, do you know what percentage are actually Black women? Out of yes, 2%. And there's only 0.00003% of attorneys in the United States. So not even 1% of humans are attorneys, but wow. 0.3% of humans are attorneys. And out of that 0.3%, only 2% of that is Black. So technically, statistically, college athletes are more likely to become pros than it is for me to become an attorney.
Wow.
That's math. You can look it up. You can
I believe it. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, so it's very hard to actually become an attorney, and in being a Black woman, we're only 2%. And what people don't realize in law school is that they just don't let you fly by. Kind of like you can take your 5-year journey in college, even some people 6, 7. That's not the case in law school. They do cuts every semester, which a lot of people don't know. They're just like the team. Every January, law school cuts people, January and May. And statistically, Black women have the highest dismissal cut ratings in the whole, out of every single demographic. We are 5 times more likely to not get picked to be back on the team next year.
Wow.
10 times more likely to quit the team by ourselves because of lack of help. So I'm not discouraging anyone, because the benefits and the rewards for actually being able to assist and actually saying that I have something that no one can take away from me, it's so worth all of the work that you actually have to put in to get it. But it is hard work. And I suggest, if you want to be an attorney, if you want to have something that nobody can take from you, I will always have a job. If you want that, find a mentor, find someone. It doesn't even have to be a Black person. It's just be someone that wants you to succeed, wants you to win, that's already done that, and say, how can I do this? Because I want to do this. I want to have a job for the rest of my life. Attorneys do make a lot of money. Some don't. Some, do a lot of pro bono work. Depends on what area that you're working in. But off-rip attorneys generally make more money than the average American citizen. So not everybody are millionaires. Not everybody makes $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. But everybody always will have a job, because somebody needs an attorney, some way or some fashion. Yeah. Attorneys actually rule this country. There's nothing in this country that an attorney does not have their
there you go.
Even your t-shirt that you have, the logo on your shirt, that is actually, the attorney actually had to sign off on that to actually make that a legal logo that nobody else could use. The building that you're in, an attorney actually had to sign off on that and make sure that everything was correct. So there's always a job for an attorney. So if you want to actually be an attorney to help people in millions of different ways, I suggest you get a mentor, somebody that's done it, because it's hard, but it's absolutely working. And for some reason, people think that you're smart when you're an attorney.
And that's what I wanted to talk about next, is because obviously you focus on immigration. And a lot of people, they watch the courtroom dramas. Law and Order was an extremely popular show. My parents watched it. I was a big fan of the show All Rise. But that is such a minuscule part of the legal field. And like you said, attorneys touch everything. And I think a lot of young people, they're kind of scared, thinking, if I talk to an attorney, somebody's going to jail. That's very rarely the case. If you want to open a business, you need to talk with an attorney before you ever open the door.
LLC.
You want to buy a house? If you want to buy a house, you want to buy land, you better have you're going to meet with an attorney at the closing table.
Attorney.
If you want to get married, you're probably going to deal with an attorney to draw up any paperwork. Heaven forbid you get divorced, you're going to deal with an attorney. If you ever want to adopt a child, you're going to deal with an attorney. So there are so many different areas of law that people don't think about that has nothing to do with people going to jail. And then there's attorneys that never step foot in a courtroom. And but obviously you focus on immigration law, which has been in the news a lot lately, and I think is also extremely misunderstood. Because somebody's dealing with an immigration attorney doesn't mean somebody's even in danger of being deported. It has to, there are so many things that have to go along with immigration. We have a lot of immigrant students in our district, a lot of first-generation Americans, and it's just important to know what everybody's rights are. And it's important to know why immigrants are needed and why they need to take care of things and why people like you can help them.
Absolutely. So when I was in undergrad, I have a degree in communications, right? So I thought that I was going to be a sports entertainment attorney, right? I thought I was going to, do all the cool things and hang out with the rappers and the singers. I thought I was going to do all that because it made sense with my television production degree. And then I decided, I was like, you know what? I wanted to use my degree for something bigger, right? So I originally went to law school doing civil rights. And then I ended up in the hospital. And everyone, if you've ever been to the hospital, you rarely see doctors, all right? So everybody that assisted me while I was in the hospital for 10 days were immigrants. The people that brought my food, the nurses, the techs, the people that cleaned the floors, everybody comes in there were literally immigrants. And I'm a talker, so I like to talk to people. Where are you from? You have this accent, blah, blah, blah. And so I got to know these people. And so, as I said, I'm a person of faith, and it just resonated with me, their stories. So I'm like, Jesus, you want me to be an immigration attorney? And so literally, when I got out of school, not out of school, out of the hospital that December, I emailed literally over 100 attorneys and said, hey, I have no immigration experience, but I want to do immigration law. Please put me in, coach. And so I emailed them, and I actually got a chance to actually start interning at a nonprofit immigration center that helped immigrants. And so immigration law, as you said, has been in the news lately. But I always say immigrants are just normal, regular people, just like anybody else. It's just moving somewhere else for a better life, right? It's not that deep. It's just like someone says, hey, I want to move out of Chicago because Chicago is really rough. So I'm going to move in a suburb somewhere in Mississippi because it's better. That's literally all it is. And as you said, sometimes when you deal with immigration attorneys, it has absolutely nothing to do with deportation or anything like that. Students actually come here on student visas that want to actually come here and go to school. Sometimes you actually need an attorney because you need a visa to visit another country. So it's not what you see on TV. It's not what you see on the news. But what I do is actually what you see on the news on TV, because I do asylum. About 95% of my work is asylum and refugee. Wow. And it's funny because I always tell people my job is actually like Law and Order, but a lot of immigration attorneys, if you do handle like family immigration and things like that, it's not that. I just happen to fall into that type of area of law where it legit is like it literally is like what you see on TV. But immigration court is actually really, really boring. It's not hype, it's not exciting or anything like that. But the cases are really, really, Olivia Benson could have this case.
Yeah. Now, before I get to the students' questions, obviously we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Charlotte E. Ray Law Society, which you are the chairperson of, which is a great organization that encourages young Black women to get into the legal field. So just talk about the work you guys do, and if anybody, once they get into college and they're interested in joining.
Absolutely. So Charlotte E. Ray was the first Black female attorney in the United States. She actually graduated from an HBCU, Howard University. And she was the first female really to be licensed in the District of Columbia in the Supreme Court. So that's where the foundation comes from her. She had a rough time in the legal field, and I believe she graduated. I want to say she graduated actually in 1913, right? And so in 1913. Few years, removed from slavery, there's still only 2% of Black women that are attorneys. Can you believe that? From 1913. And no one actually would hire Attorney Ray because she was female, number one, because she was Black. The only person that actually assisted her, I'm sure your students have heard Frederick Douglass. He actually assisted her and promoted her. So Charlotte E. Ray Legal Society is in honor of her. And the acronym CERLS is pronounced curls, and it signifies her name, but also the structure, foundation, the coarseness of Black women's hair. So we call the organization Curls because of the strength of our hair, the uniqueness of our hair, and it happens to be the initials of Charlotte E. Ray. So you're like, oh, that's my curls sister, or we say the curls, like that. It really is to uplift and to ensure that we increase the 2% of Black female attorneys. And that's what we do. We have, when you get into law school, we actually have an undergraduate initiative too, where we help students that are in undergrad who wants to pursue law school. We get them a big sister in law school. We help them with LSAT prep. We help them get mentors. We have events for this. Specifically, our last one, we had like an ice cream social for undergrads, was able to come and meet and have ice cream with attorneys and judges. And so we have one
Wow.
for law school students too, where the first thing, our number one pillar of success is academics. And we create a library for the students. And it's because law school books are so expensive. They can run from $1,000, $3,000, $800. So what we do is we create a library, and the books actually come from students. After you've done finished with this class, you don't need it, donate it to the library. And
Oh,
so we
wow.
have a
That's awesome.
couple of hundred books that students can actually check out for free. If they're members of Curls, and check the book out at the beginning of the year, in the semester, bring it back. We just say, hey, after you finish your year, and if you've purchased some books, donate them. You don't need them anymore, and just go ahead and make the library bigger. So Curls is represented in over 32 law schools, from UCLA to
Wow.
Georgia State to Howard to FAMU and Texas Southern, which those are the three HBCUs, and Southern actually. So we're actually represented in all of the HBCU law schools as well, because I'm a big advocate on getting an education at least once in your life at an HBCU, because it'll change your life and it'll change your mind. And for those 4 years, I always tell Black people, you have the rest of your life to be a minority. For 4 years or 3 years, you can actually be a part of the majority, and see how that feels to sit in higher education.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of HBCU community colleges in Mississippi as well. So it
Absolutely.
really can
Mm-hmm.
be a great experience. And we've actually had some non-black students go to one of those HBCUs, and they even had a great experience. So it really,
Absolutely.
I always say, historically black does not mean exclusively black. So there really can be a place for
Absolutely.
anybody.
Absolutely. And Curls, even though Curls is about increasing the 2% of Black women, it is not just exclusive for Black women. Actually, one of the founders of the organization was a male.
Oh,
And
cool.
there's actually white males in the organization, and there's a white female that sits on an executive board at a school. So it's allies. You always need allies, as someone that wants to assist in the cause, but they actually benefit from being a part of the organization too. They get books just like everybody else. They get mentors. They get networking. So, and I always tell people in law school, to assist Black women in law school, because it actually helps the school. Because if when I graduated and I passed the bar in the first time, it actually helped my school because their numbers go up. So I would say,
Yeah.
why not help a black woman? Because we're actually accepted into law school. It's about staying there. So help Black women actually increase the 2%, because it actually helps schools, and it actually helps make the legal system more diverse.
Yeah.
Just imagine there was more Black women or Hispanic women, or if the Supreme Court looked like a rainbow, how different the country would look if it wasn't majority white males that's actually making the laws. Women
And
tend,
yeah, that website is cerls.org, is the
yes,
Curls
sir.
website. Well, I do have some questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can. I love this first one. This is Edward Flowers. He's in 10th grade. He's a member of our band. And he asked, how do you stay, I'm sorry, have you ever, in your experience in law, how has it changed your perspective of society?
So change my perspective of society. It really hasn't. It affirmed what I always believed, because again, my background, living as a Black person in different spaces, so things necessarily does not shock me, but being an attorney and being in different rooms, you're able to hear different viewpoints of people who you would sometimes may think have a viewpoint like me, and they don't. And so what it does for me is that it makes me want to fight harder for my particular causes. And right now, I'm really big on immigrants' rights.
That's awesome. I got time for two more, and I love both of these. This is Lucridric Harris. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What were your biggest influences to become an attorney?"
So I mentioned Star Jones, Thurgood Marshall. I really love Thurgood Marshall. And my favorite attorney of all time is Constance Baker Motley. If y'all have not heard of her, you should definitely look her up. She's amazing. She's also my sorority sister. So yeah, those are my biggest influence, but ultimately my biggest reason for besides keeping a job is I really, really want to make my family, my ancestors, and my community really proud of the work that I do.
That's awesome. And just to mention Thurgood Marshall, I don't think he gets enough credit. Schools in the United States would not have been integrated when they did if it had not been the work for Thurgood Marshall. I think they still would have been, obviously, they still would have been integrated, but not as soon as they were without the great work of Thurgood Marshall, who was the first Black Supreme Court justice. So I know we're not in Black History Month anymore, but it's Black history always. And that's such an important person in the legal field and a person in history. And I've actually got his picture up here in the room. He's a hero of mine. So I just think everybody needs to understand we started having integrated classrooms because of the legal work that Thurgood Marshall did as an attorney there in Washington, D.C.
I would like to interrupt you. The person that wrote that brief was Constance Baker Motley.
Yeah, she had a big part in that.
She definitely was. It was a team in NAACP, and I love them both because they together as a team, as you said, don't get the recognition of that. And so crazy, Brown versus Board of Education. I actually met the Browns, the sisters. They actually came to Lane College and talked about that. And that was an inspiration to me too, inspiring me to actually hear Attorney Thurgood hear them talk about the work that Attorney Thurgood Marshall did along with Constance Baker Motley. So yeah, and they're still alive. Ironically, those Brown sisters are still here.
Awesome. Well, I got time for one more, and I love this one. This is Rondell Ellis. He's in 10th grade. And he asked, if I wanted to become an attorney, what would be the best thing to get a degree in?
Most people think pre-law. Do not do that. Do not get a pre-law. The best, what's his name, Montel?
Rondell.
That's the best question, okay? If you want to be an attorney, learn math, learn English. Because an attorney uses analytical skills and try to figure things out. So do a STEM program. Do like a STEM program or English, or take a lot of STEM electives and then major in something really fun like I did, which was communications. And I got to make a lot of videos and TV shows and things like that nature. But you really, really, really want to do science and math to up your brain skills.
Yeah, and we don't have time to get into it, but with these AI companies popping up and all these tech companies, they're going to need attorneys. And that's a whole other rabbit hole.
That's the new thing. That's definitely the new thing in the legal.
So if anybody's interested in that, that is a great legal area to get into right now. Well, we're almost out of time. We're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. But just a couple things before we go. We want to just plug Curls one more time. CERLS.org is the website where for anybody that is interested in becoming an attorney once they get into college, getting ready for law school. We have several that have expressed interest. So really, really use that great resource.
Or if they're looking for a mentor in high school, they can reach out to us and we can plug them in with a mentor, even if it's in high school.
That's awesome. Well, the last thing before we go is obviously you're so passionate about the rights of everyone and so passionate about the legal field. So as these kids start making a transition from high school into their next step, why should they really not only, if they don't want to be an attorney, that's fine, but at least understand why we have such a need for legal professionals?
So one of my favorite quotes is by Malcolm X, and says, "Education is passport to our future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." So it's really important that you educate yourself first and foremost, because you never know if you are in a situation, and you have to understand your rights. And you may not be an immigrant. You may know someone that's an immigrant. You really just need to know the basis of immigration law. You need to know the basis of law in general, because law runs this country literally. So just know it just for yourself, in case you're pulled over, in case someone stops you in the store and thinks that you're stealing. Just in general, know the basis of law. Young people nowadays have access to Google. Google, find an attorney, ask questions, know it for yourself. It will make you a better American citizen.
Love it. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. Just such passion for the legal field and all the great work you're doing out there in Atlanta. Rose Love, attorney, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
All right, talk to you soon, buddy.
All right. Thank you so much.